First and foremost, what I want everyone to understand about me is I'm a New Yorker. I was born in New York. I went to school in New York. I've lived my entire life in New York. So when you start thinking about, how important the policies and achieving the goals for New York is, for me personally, and for most of our team here at the New York ISO, that's just an important, critical part of who we are. I was lucky enough. I grew up in the Albany area, so this is home for me. This is the environment. I've lived here almost all my life. Went to school at Clarkson University up in Potsdam, New York. Got my master's degree at Syracuse University in Syracuse. So all of my schooling's been in New York. Starting my career at Niagara Mohawk in Syracuse, I started to recognize how the industry was changing, and you could just barely see the introduction of what was turning out to be the big change that the industry saw in the late 90s, where as a matter of federal policy, New York State and the federal government wanted to introduce competition into the utility space for the benefit of consumers. So right around the time that the New York ISO was starting up, and this was in 1999, I had the opportunity to interview for an open position. It was this chaotic time where the industry was going through the big change in the 1990s. Markets were being built. Utilities were learning how to interact with this new entity called the New York ISO. So I was interviewed by a series of people over a 4-hour stretch, and I'll never forget at the conclusion of it, Bill Muessler, who was the first CEO of the New York ISO, he came into me and he said, "Rich, we really want you to join our team." He said, "I'm going to offer you a job." He says, "I got to tell you, I have no idea what you're going to work on, and I have no idea what your title is going to be, but I guarantee that you are going to have fun." And he has had so much energy and passion for what we were doing, what he was doing to help build this new entity, the New York ISO. On my way home, my wife said, "Well, what are you going to do about this job?" I said, "Well, I don't know if it sounds like a good idea. It doesn't even have a job description." I said, but then I thought back to the passion and the energy that Bill Muessler had, and I said, "You know what? I'm going to do this. I think this is something that's going to be exciting. We're building something new, get in at the start of something that I think is just going to be fantastic." And that was 20 years ago, and I couldn't be happier. It's been the most exciting career. By the time I was ready and positioned to be thought about for this job, I had really worked at every department across the company. So I have a good, firm understanding of what everybody does and how tightly it needs to work together for us to be successful as an organization. The crazy thing about the pandemic is we had a plan. We had a plan even before it hit the front page of the news, and this is something that's part of our normal continuity planning exercise. It sits on a shelf, and we hope we never, ever have to use it. And then we started seeing some of these news reports in January about this sickness that was rapidly affecting certain communities in China. And we said, let's take a look at that pandemic plan just in case, and let's dust it off, and if that ever happened here, we just want to know that we're ready. It requires so much collaboration between teams. I was just really pessimistic that we were going to keep the same pace, that we were going to be able to keep the same set of goals, that we were going to make progress on everything that was really important to us and identified as critical to this industry. But I got to tell you, the employees really pulled together, and everybody recognized the challenge. They stood up to the task. So every one of the projects that we had laid out as important for the year were on schedule to get done. So that's a testament to the New York ISO employees. That's a testament to the dedication that they have to the task. And I couldn't be happier, more proud of the work that we've done as an organization, especially in these challenging conditions. When you start thinking about what it takes to operate a power grid, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of systems, but there's also a limited subset of very, very talented, very, very capable individuals, our grid operators. And when we started to look at the possibility of those individuals getting sick, and not having that very, very talented cadre of individuals who can actually keep the lights on and run the grid, we just viewed that as an unacceptable risk, not only to their own health and safety, but also to all of New Yorkers. If we can't keep the lights on in this pandemic, as bad as it got in New York City, just imagine how bad it would have been if the lights were out. So at the end of March, third week of March, we made the very, very difficult decision to ask every one of these men and women that operate our power grid out of the control room. We sought volunteers. Who wants to move onto the site, live in cramped little trailers, eat food out of our cafeteria, which is great for the first few days, but then variety challenges kind of kick in. So we asked for volunteers, and we were tremendous. We were just so happy that we were oversubscribed. We had more people volunteer to want to move onto our site than we actually needed. When you think about the sacrifice that they made, it's tremendous. You think about the fear that was evident in society. So every one of these men and women have a family, they have children, and they made the very, very difficult decision to move onto the New York ISO control room site, leave their families at home. They had access to talk to them through FaceTime and Skype and all that kind of stuff, but they couldn't be home. They couldn't be there managing the family life, dealing with everything that needed to be dealt with. And they did that as a sacrifice to help make sure that in recognition of what we do here and the importance of what we do at the New York ISO and the importance to all of New Yorkers, they made that sacrifice and they moved on to the site. And I give them all the credit in the world for doing that.